The U.S. has crossed a financial boundary point, a $38 trillion debt, a number so large it can't be taxed away, budgeted away so quietly. Behind the noise of politics and markets, Washington is exploring a path almost no one expected. A path built on assets the government already controls: gold, seized Bitcoin, and a third mechanism the public hasn't heard about yet. A mechanism that could, in theory, restructure the government's balance sheet and make the $38 trillion debt look solvable on paper. But if it goes wrong, the damage wouldn't stay in Washington. It would ripple through banks, markets, savings, and every part of the real economy. In the next few minutes, you'll see why this idea is being discussed now, why almost no one is talking about it publicly, and why its success or failure could redefine the future of the dollar long before the public realizes what happened. America's debt problem isn't a distant government issue. It has become a pressure point built directly into the life of every ordinary American. The U.S. now carries over $38 trillion in national debt, and the number is accelerating. Every year, the fastest growing line item in the federal budget isn't education, healthcare, or defense, it's interest. This is why the system feels tight for regular people. The traditional fixes are no longer politically possible. Raising taxes spark public revolt. Cutting spending is legislatively impossible. And using inflation to melt down the debt now risks undermining confidence in the dollar itself. So if Washington can't tax it away, can't cut it away, and doesn't dare inflate it away, what options are left? When the liability side is unfixable, the only place left to look is the asset side. And this is where gold, Bitcoin, and one silent law begin to matter. A mechanism built not to reduce the debt, but to make the debt look smaller compared to the assets backing it. And that's where the story begins. Cylinder 1, gold revaluation, ancient metal, modern leverage. The United States owns more than 260 million ounces of gold, the largest official stockpile in the world. But on government books, that gold is still valued at $42.22 per ounce, a number from the Nixon era. If the government simply updates the accounting value of that gold to something closer to the real market price, say $3,000 or $3,500, the federal balance sheet transforms instantly. And once those assets appear stronger on paper, the government can quietly unlock new spending power using those assets as collateral. It's a lever the U.S. has pulled before. In 1934, the Roosevelt administration revalued gold from $20 to $35, and the government instantly created nearly $3 billion in new spending power, at a time when $3 billion was an enormous rescue package without new taxes or debt issuance. Cylinder 2, the strategic Bitcoin reserve, digital collateral with real upside. Unlike gold, Bitcoin isn't something the government bought. Most of America's Bitcoin reserves come from seizures, criminal cases, hacked funds, and federal investigations. For years, the government auctioned that Bitcoin off. But in March 2025, policy changed. An executive order shifted the U.S. toward holding seized Bitcoin as a strategic reserve with future confiscations, adding to a fixed supply pool, a digital counterpart to Fort Knox. Bitcoin is now treated just like gold, but with higher upside. But there's a catch. A quiet danger was built into both cylinders. If gold drops 30%, if Bitcoin crashes 50%, the collateral value evaporates. And suddenly, the Federal Reserve, which holds these asset claims on its balance sheet, is left with weakened backing, a scenario that could trigger a loss of confidence in the entire U.S. financial system and expose how little of that strength translates into real spending power. Because revaluing gold or holding Bitcoin doesn't erase debt. They only expand the asset side of the ledger. But the real question is, how does stronger collateral become real, circulating money without issuing new debt? For decades, there wasn't an answer. The United States had only one pathway to create large amounts of spending dollars: issue treasuries, borrow more, and let the debt climb even higher. But now, a new pathway is forming: a system that doesn't rely on selling bonds, raising taxes, or printing money in the old sense, but on transforming government-controlled assets into digital claims that function like currency, tokens that can flow through the financial system without ever appearing as new debt on the books. This creates something Washington has never had before: synthetic liquidity. Money-like instruments that don't require borrowing to exist. And this shift didn't happen by accident. A legal structure was built for it, a structure that barely made headlines, but fundamentally changes how the U.S. could create money in the future. It's called the Genius Act. Buried under regulatory language and framed as a stablecoin law, it allows the government to issue digital claims backed by assets it controls, including gold and Bitcoin. Combine those pieces together, and the architecture becomes clear. Gold revaluation strengthens the base. The Bitcoin reserve adds a high upside collateral. The Genius Act turns both into circulating value, not debt, but asset-backed liquidity. An entirely new engine for money creation. One designed to, in theory, generate trillions in spending capacity without increasing the official national debt by a single dollar. But the same engine that could stabilize the system could destabilize it just as easily if the value of those assets suddenly collapse. And that's where the true risk begins. If this new engine works the way its architects hope, it could give the United States something it hasn't had in decades: breathing room. A way to make the $38 trillion problem look manageable without announcing tax hikes, spending cuts, adding trillions more to the national debt. In the best-case scenario, revalued gold, a strengthened Bitcoin reserve, and asset-backed digital claims could create a kind of soft reset. The balance sheet looks stronger. The debt-to-asset ratio improves, and Washington gains new stimulus power without passing a single borrowing bill. But every system that rewrites risk also concentrates it, and this is where the cracks begin to appear. If gold drops, if Bitcoin crashes, or if confidence in these new asset-backed instruments weakens, the entire engine begins to strain. The dollar would look less secure, and lenders, domestic and foreign, would question how the United States manages its obligations. This is the hidden danger inside the plan. The asset side becomes just as volatile as the debt side, and when that happens, the response is predictable. The government leans harder on money creation to refill the gaps created by falling asset values. More liquidity, more intervention, and potentially more inflation, whether anyone wants it or not. For ordinary people, the effects show up slowly at first. Credit tightens, refinancing gets harder. The price of essentials rises before paychecks catch up, and the system begins shifting the burden from the government's balance sheet onto the public's daily life. It promises stability on paper, but the risk always finds its way back to households, businesses, and markets. And that's why understanding this shift matters. Because if the government is upgrading the strength of its assets, you can't afford to sit in assets that are being quietly diluted by the process. This isn't about predicting collapse or betting on miracles. It's about recognizing the direction the system is moving and positioning yourself so the transition doesn't happen at your expense. Everything we've walked through points to one truth. The U.S. isn't trying to erase $38 trillion by shrinking the debt. It's trying to make the system strong enough to survive the debt. Gold revaluation, National Bitcoin Reserve, Genius Act. Together, they form a three-part engine the public never voted on, never debated, and was never meant to understand. An engine designed to generate liquidity inside a system that can no longer rely on traditional tools. But this isn't the first time the U.S. has prepared a mechanism like this. Every major monetary reset in American history began the same way, with the quiet revaluation of gold. It started decades ago, with an emergency mechanism buried deep inside the Federal Reserve's balance sheet, a mechanism powerful enough to rewrite the entire financial system overnight. And if you want to understand deeper logic behind this new gold and crypto engine, you need to understand the original emergency lever it's built on. Because gold and Bitcoin are just the visible parts, the Genius Act shows you the architecture, but the gold certificate account is the foundation. The tool that explains why gold keeps rising. why policymakers keep circling back to it, and why every major economic reset begins with the same signal. If the plan we explored in this video becomes necessary, the first move won't be crypto, digital dollars, or stablecoin frameworks. It will be gold. It always has been. And if you don't understand how that emergency button works, you're missing the most important piece of this entire transition. That's why the next video is essential. It breaks down the mechanism inside the system that was never meant for the public. The gold certificate account, a tool used in 1933, again in 1971, and referenced every time the US approaches a structural breaking point. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, but the system keeps moving the goalposts, what you'll see in that video will finally make sense of it. It shows the reset mechanism, the historical pattern, the emergency lever insiders reach for long before the public realizes anything is happening. And once you understand that, everything about today's gold surge, the new Bitcoin reserve, and the Genius Act falls into place. The full breakdown of the gold revaluation is linked in the description.